Good evening, Britannia, and hello to the rest of the world. Welcome back to 2C TV. We have some updates over the last few minutes. We finally finished all the votes in the House of Lords. It's not a good night for Rishi Sunak or the Tory government in general. 5 votes in the House of Lords over the Rwanda bill. 5 defeats for Rishi Sunak. And now we've gone back to square one. It's absolute chaos, by the way. So we're going to go through every single vote, what they were about, what the numbers were, and where we're going to go from here. Because it seems to be all over for our mini Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and his promises to stop the votes. It's not gone down too well. All right, let's start with the First Amendment, the first vote, and the first defeat. Once again, the House of Lords became an obstacle. And I'm saying this as someone who's not really in favour of the current Rwanda bill. They did the bill again. The first bill, the problem with that was, from our perspective, the people who actually want the border crisis to finish, is that you actually had to get migrants from Rwanda as well. Then they did it again. They actually gave more powers and more control to the Rwanda government. They are in charge of saying how many they want, how they want, who they want, when they stop, how many they send to our country in exchange. They made it even worse, but they tried to basically create a new bill to say Rwanda is a safe country. The UK government have now declared Rwanda safe. But the House of Lords says that's not good enough. We have to wait for the international judges. We have to listen to the international law and all that. So the first defeat, it was a Labour amendment that made it difficult. This was actually by a former Labour MP, Lord Vernon Coker, who's now obviously in the House of Lords. This was to force the UK government, as they say, to fully comply with domestic and international law. In essence, to force the UK to follow ECHR and international judges. 274 content, only 172 not content in the House of Lords. Embarrassing defeat, as usual, for the Tories, despite obviously filling the House with a lot of Tories. The problem is, a lot of the Tory peers in the Lords are just Tory in name. Like, for example, Baroness Saida Wasi. They might be Tory, but they are very much liberal. They're not conservatives. And they're also a bunch of Ramonas, EU Ramonas, so they're against Brexit as well. So you might have a lot of Tory peers, but actually, are they conservative? Not sure about that. Of course, Justin Welby had to say something. As the head of, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the senior official of the Church of England, saying the government is challenging the right of international law to constrain our actions, your actions. And the point of international law is to stop governments going ahead with things that are wrong. But then what is the point of you guys? Why do you have so much power? You're simply an archbishop. You're simply a member of the House of Lords. How much power do you guys have to have? Your job was supposed to scrutinize and hold the government to account to make sure the legislations are technically correct. Not really go with your political opinions to block votes or to essentially delay bills in the House of Parliament. And people in the live chat, I can see their conversations already lively. We'll get your reaction after we go through all the updates. So that was the first defeat. Then Justin obviously said this. And then we had the second vote. So 5 votes. We have to go through 5 votes. Second vote was even more embarrassing because of, the reason behind it, essentially. So, second defeat amendment was about Rwanda's status as a safe country. And that was because there's a couple of amendments that are similar, but they're basically the same. This was the amendment which was about whether Parliament can declare Rwanda as a safe country after the Supreme Court ruled that it's not. Yeah. All those judges in their ivory towers are judging Rwanda as a country. I love it. 282 content. 180 not content. So that was another defeat for Rishi Sunak. So you would think that this is already an amendment about the issue of Rwanda being safe or not safe, right? No, they continued. It continues. The third amendment and the third defeat was about the same topic, differently worded. Rwanda is not safe, right? But what was the actual details of it? So the previous amendment, obviously, to pass was to ensure Rwanda is not declared a safe country until the conditions are met, whatever that means. This amendment establishes the mechanism to determine that the treaty has been fully implemented in order for Rwanda to be declared safe. See the problem, right? 277 content, 167 not content. Another defeat. That's a third defeat for the government. Then we have the fourth one. So the good news is we covered 2 votes around the issue of Rwanda being safe or not safe. Oh no, it's not over, because the fourth vote was also about the same thing, differently worded. Safe country status allowed but challenged. So this would mean that Rwanda would be assumed to be safe, as the government wants it, obviously, but it will allow the designation to be actually rebutted by credible evidence presented by decision makers. There to be obviously decision makers, including courts and tribunals. So basically, the government can say it's safe, but we're still going to use the judges and courts to say it's not safe. This amendment obviously also went through. 258 content, 171 not content. 3 votes on the same issue, right? Then we had the 5th one, still going. The 5th and the final vote. The Rwanda plan rejected. 260 content, 169 not content. The whole thing is a circus at this point. This amendment would essentially have the same effect as the previous one anyway, but it mends a different line in the bill itself. It would mean that Rwanda would be assumed a safe country, right? But obviously, the judges could say it's not. It would also undermine the government's key aim of blocking the courts. So this gives more power to judges, especially international judges, to stop us. And of course, give more power to Justin Welby and his friends in the House of Lords to stop us. Again, it's ridiculous. I'm not the biggest fan of the current Rwanda bill, but we still want the flies to take off. We want some sort of solution. So, essentially, I'm against Rishi Sunak's policy, but I'm also against these guys. Their motive in order to block this, they're not doing it because they want a better policy to stop the boats. They just want more migrants to come in. And they are getting it. You want more migrants? Oh, of course, you can get more migrants. Because since Sunday, we've had more than 660 migrants, right? And from France. Today, we saw a record-breaking issue. 385 in one day. These are not small numbers, considering we have a housing crisis, considering where the NHS capacity is having problems, considering obviously schools, we don't have schools, considering, I forgot about public services, that's just one issue, and resources. We also have difficulty in vetting people's backgrounds, so a lot of crazies could be amongst these people, let alone people who just want to come and take tax money in benefits, and some who just want to work cash in hand or whatever they want to do, make money here, send it back home to their wives and their kids and everybody else. There are so many issues that need to be discussed when it comes to this whole crisis. So 660 is a lot of people, and a record breaking of 385. 5 votes, 5 amendments, 5 defeats for Rishi Sunak. The game is over. There's no way he can find a way to recreate the legislation, the bill, start again from scratch for the 3rd time. It's over. He can go around, organize press conferences with his lectern saying, stop the boat. He promised when he was a candidate, said, in my first 100 days, I will be stopping the boats. The problem is not just the boats, Rishi Sunak. You're not even succeeding when it comes to stopping the boats. The problem is also mass legal migration. The problem is also lack of deportations for the people who are already here. We just don't want anyone coming. It's not just about those on the boats. There are other methods that they're using. There are some who are coming with legal visas and taking advantage. And there are those foreign criminals who are still walking around the country for free, inciting violence, inciting hatred, division in our society, everything else. Crime is going up. They don't seem to care about that, do they? Of course they don't. But when it comes to the election, oh, they're going to panic. They're going to come back and put something in the manifesto to give promises. And of course, the other one, Keir Starmer, is going to portray himself as some sort of leader who's going to sort out the immigration crisis. Ironically, actually, at this point, the Labour government might be able to do something better than the Tories. Not that they want to, but because they have to in order to win the election. Sad to say. Super chat from Keith Lawton, one of our regulars and loyal supporters. Thank you so much, Mr. Lawton. And Andrew as well, saying we have an unwanted regional manager. They are now panicking that the void that they ignored for so long is now being filled with the angry public who had enough. Uprising. Another super chat. Add free fruit and veg to the bill, then it will pass. We have a couple of subscribers who are worried about my diet on a daily basis. Unfortunately, I'm actually having very unhealthy dinner tonight. I'm having pizza. Oh yeah, beer and pizza. You're not going to stop me. I'm not having fruit and veg for dinner. Anyway, going back to the crisis at hand. There's a lot of issues, by the way, because while we were trying to obviously wait for the votes to finish, as they have now, do you know what the media have been doing? You know what they've been doing, right? I don't know if you watch TV. Probably shouldn't. I'll watch it on your behalf so you don't have to suffer. They are still talking about George Galloway. I know. The headlines, it's still about George Galloway. Oh, where's George Galloway going now? He's in the house now. Is he walking in the palace? What is he saying? Oh, how is his hat? What do people say about George Galloway? I don't care. We have bigger problems right now. You can talk about George Galloway's hat tomorrow. Right now, the media's job is not just to hold Rishi Sunak to account, but also ask questions about the House of Lords, about the mechanism, about the role of the House of Lords, about how it's been politicised over the last few decades. This is no longer the House of Lords we've been told about, the traditional grown-up chamber that was supposed to just simply scrutinise bills on a technical level to make sure it's correct. Not to vote based on their own biased political opinions. That's the job of the House of Commons. We don't want another chamber that's political. There are some idiots who want the second chamber to also be political. Oh, elected chamber. Let's have it. No, stop with the elected chambers. We already have one. The Lords were supposed to be what they used to be. The technical people. To actually go through the technicalities. And they are already voting on political opinions anyway. Political positions. Because we turned all the former MPs into members of the House of Lords. Try not to make it even more political. That will help. Simply get rid of all the political appointees, go back to the tradition, and respect the British Constitution. No one's going to do it, by the way, because obviously the Labour Party's position is also to just create a second elected chamber, like all the other third parties. And of course, the Tories just want to keep it like this, but politicise it with more appointees. It's a lose-lose right now, because nobody's coming out with the true solution to the House of Lords, to go back to tradition, when it used to work. Bunch of idiots. Lisa says, just discussing the Rwanda gets them a nice pocket full of expenses, 5 lots of expenses for a scheme that won't happen, as mass migration is very lucrative to MPs who pretend that they will stop them going. Again, the focus is also way too much on Rwanda and the small boats. It goes beyond the boats. You know, even when it comes to illegal migration, there are other routes that they're using. Some coming through legal methods like student visas, and they overstay their welcome. Then we also have to talk about mass legal migration. None of these politicians are even brave enough to talk about it because they get cancelled, even if they want to. Super chat from Phil, thank you. Doesn't the word illegal mean anything anymore? Of course not. And it's funny because the liberals in America, decades ago, they made it even worse because they reframed the whole debate by calling it undocumented. They just don't have the right documents. They're illegals. Of course, since Trump came into power in 2016, they forced the media to now say illegal immigrants rather than undocumented. Ooh, we don't have the documents. What does that even mean? You don't have the paperwork. You entered the country illegally. You broke the law. Undocumented. Mass deportations are the only solution. Also, the only sensible solution, which is funny because 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you would have seen a racist policy or a very extreme. But now it's common sense. The only solution. Net zero. I'm very much in favor of net zero. Net zero immigration. Yes, at this point, for a long time, for years and years, we have to go with net zero migration to sort out the problem. And then you can actually finish the deportation program, if you can actually even start in the first place, foreign criminals, anybody who's doing treason, and of course the illegals. Respect the rule of law, respect the process. There are genuinely good people who've been in the queue, legal economic migrants from countries that could be compatible to our culture, who want to come and contribute. We can't even pay attention to them anymore, because right now we can't even afford them anymore. Until a few years ago, we would have said, okay, let's just focus on the good legal migrants who are waiting in the queue. Right now, they have to wait as well, unfortunately. They have to wait as well. They can't come in for a while. We got way too many. We're not building houses. We don't have space. We don't build new hospitals or new schools. I mean, we build tiny schools with free schools and academies, but that's it. It's not even about that. It's about the culture. Net zero migration, immigration, love it. Yeah, it's the 2CTV's flagship policy. Net zero works. There's a picture from KKK from Israel. It says, send them to SpongeBob home. Then they will ask kindly to send them to their actual homeland. There are ways to do it. There are definitely ways to do it. Again, one of the biggest problems when it comes to lack of deportations or rejection of illegal migrants is actually goes back to Tony Blair creating a legislative act of parliament to force the UK every time to follow ECHR ruling. Other members of ECHR don't have to do it. Denmark doesn't have to do it. France doesn't have to do it. They're doing deportations already. We have to follow the rules, technically on paper, the European judges, because Tony Blair made it that way. Mickman says, Biden is a joke. The White House is catching flack for using a new politically correct terms for illegal migrants coming across the southern border. Newcomers. Oh, they've got a new one. So, decades ago, they came up with the undocumented migrants. And now, newcomers. So stupid. Newcomers. Oh no, people have noticed. I was wondering if anyone's going to notice today. Hey Maya, what's with the Zelensky t-shirt? Every time I wear this, people say, you're wearing the Zelensky t-shirt. The problem is, the difference is, I only wear this every now and then and I wash it. I have a feeling Zelensky wears that t-shirt so many times every day. I'm not sure if he washes it anymore, unless he's got multiple t-shirts, identical, and it's become part of his uniform now. At this point, he can go back to wearing ties and suits. It will look more authoritative than just wearing that, well, this. I have a feeling he might have ordered 10 identical t-shirts from Primark and I'm wearing them, or H&M or something. Martin Super Chat saying, for your new show, could I please suggest you interview Whitney Webb? She's done loads of US interviews, but none with a big Brit YouTuber. Cheers. Enjoy beer and pizza. You deserve it, mate. Let me actually write it down, because people give me suggestions today, actually, especially. There we go. Now it's in the record. No promises. Obviously, I'll be in touch with Whitney. See how it goes. Obviously, with the new format with 2CTV Plus, we are going to have a weekly interview show as well. We're going to have a debate show. We're going to have an interview show. So we're going to need a lot of guest suggestions. So feel free to just suggest guests as well. Although some people suggest guests that we've already interviewed recently. We're like, bring Richard Tyson. Like, I've interviewed Richard 4 times now. I've given him so much platform. Enough Richard Tyson. Go with someone else. But obviously, when it's relevant, I'll bring him back, or anybody for that matter. Tommy says, BLM, baby lives matter. That's a good one. Now the conversation gone back to Islam. Great. How did we do this? Arranged marriages have been allowed to bring people over to expand the Muslim population, and it's been going on for years. It's not just about the arranged marriages. They just have a lot of babies anyway. The issue we have is that for a long time, even in the UK, in certain segregated areas and in the so-called ghettos, they've been doing forced marriages until politicians had to do something about it. They're still sometimes doing it, by the way. Forced marriages in the UK, unofficially forced marriages, let's just say. Really bad. Because you can still get married as a Muslim until, then you have to wait for the kid to get to the legal age, and then you register in terms of the UK registry. But you can still when it comes to the Islamic law and Sharia. Even if you're in the UK or US or Canada, you can still marry them. Really bad. Vulture UK says, hi all, hope you're all well. Had a good chat with someone earlier and he agrees with me. The powers that be want us to fight each other. It's called divide and conquer. Well, of course, I mean, it is much easier. It's not just about, the consistency of crises and division. It's also about the fact that distraction works. They use the narrative in the mainstream media and the mainstream press. I can tell you a lot, by the way, in terms of how the game works. How do you think broadcast media, including 2CTV, get our news? We all have access to one big database. Certain companies, for example, that have their own, obviously, reporters and journalists across the country, for example. They find the stories, then broadcast channels, so GB News and BBC News, Channel 4, 2CTV, all of us, we have access to that. There's a feed, there's a live feed. Every 2 minutes it gets updated, like Twitter. You get news stories. Could be anything, random stories, regional stories, anything. And I have access to it. And there are obviously other ways as well. If you want to do investigative journalism, you could have your own journalist. And I'm seeing it throughout the day, because I can check when a story comes out, when I report it, and then I check the other websites. No, they choose not to. They choose to focus on the trivia. They choose to focus on gossip politics. They all have access to it. They can choose to report it. It's not like they haven't been told about it. We're all told about the same things. The same. Some people, when, for example, on Twitter, I get DMs. I can't really check them, but I can see notifications. People send me stories. I appreciate it, but I've been made aware hours before you send that story, because you're sending to me when it's already been reported by one of the websites. We already have access to it. So when it comes to, for example, the bigger wire websites, so Reuters does the international stuff, PA Media, mostly UK based, these feeds go to all of us, all our channels. Some choose to ignore the real stories. This is where the bias comes from. The bias that you get from the mainstream media is not necessarily what they say. It's not necessarily, sometimes they guests and contributors or experts say things, but it's not necessarily the presenter on BBC News sits there all the time saying, I'm going to basically, call Brexiteers this or that. That's not the bias we're talking about. They are smart. They use the guests to do that on behalf of them. But the problem is, the bias that they have is what they report, what they choose to report, and how they report it. It's not rocket science. They just make it seem like you require certain expertise. Apparently you do, but the expertise you require is common sense. And they don't have that. This is a terrible idea, EK says, 2C for PM. Terrible idea. For myself and for the country. I'd rather die in a ditch. Bye-bye Sunak. I agree. Yeah, it sounds like Rwanda got a good deal. I know. The thing is, even the Rwandan government have been sick and tired of all this. Their leaders have come out to say, we are ready. We are more than happy to cancel the whole thing and even refund the money. They don't even want the money anymore because it's creating more problems for them as well. Tony says, let the lefty morons and Islamists into the House of Lords. See how they feel then. Only a couple of elections away, a couple of general elections away for us to see more Islamic and Islamist MPs in the House of Commons, by the way. Even if not in the name of an official political party, they would still do it as part of other parties or as independents. Buddy Max says, Reuters sucks. Spot on. Testify. I agree. Reuters are also a bunch of dinosaurs now in the analog world. Chaos. Obviously, sometimes some of their journalists find good stories, but the editorial stuff, ugh. Well, although they pretend it's not editorial, by the way. Are we talking about Zelensky again? What's going on? Hugh says I'm guessing is Zelensky. The live chat is always out of context. I don't know what you mean. I think it's Zelensky. He has British troops on the ground in Ukraine. He's trying his hardest to get the US into war with Russia. The keyboard is interesting. That spelling. I wonder where Hugh is actually typing from. Yeah, it all started because I'm wearing this, by the way. Don says, if you ever need modding help, I mod 30 channels. Happy to help. Well, we're going to have to bring it back because only because of spamming. We have attempted recently and before to use some of the subscribers to actually do modding and to kind of moderate the live chat. Problem is, some got out of control and started banning people because of what they said. We don't do that. It's free speech. We only ban if you start spamming. And right now it's just me again. So yeah, we're going to need some sort of solution, even if we have to get you guys again. We just need a strict policy. Don't ban if they say something mean. Just ban people if they spam. Anyone who's basically copy and paste the same message more than 3 times, that's too much. Technically it should be more than once, but I give him benefit of the doubt. Hi Maya, hope all is well. Don't know if you saw my footage in Trafalgar Square the other day. I don't know. Which one was that? I've seen a lot of footage, unfortunately. My head is exploding these days with all the chaotic stuff on Saturday. Feel free to send me an email if you haven't already. Diana says, so sad to see this happening to our once glorious country. There really doesn't seem to be any hope for a decent life here anymore. I said this earlier on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It was kind of frustrating to see over the last few months, especially over the last few months, the attitude from certain migrants. And we're not just talking about Islamism. We're just talking about, generally speaking, the attitude from a lot of immigrants in this country. Not all, but it seems like that number is increasing. Those who seem to be self-entitled, demanding. They demand to be welcomed. They demand free housing. They demand a job. They demand special treatment. Self-entitled. If you feel entitled, apologies for my French, but you're entitled to shit. Be grateful. Be grateful that you're here. It's your duty to integrate with the rest of society. It's not the duty of the society that you're entering for them to become like you. But that was a policy when the migrants were minorities compared to masses. What will happen when the migrants eventually become the majority or half and half? What then? Well, technically that means the natives of every country then have to obey, right? Is that sustainable? Will that country be the original country, even if technically they still have the French flag or the Canadian flag or the Union flag? Yeah, on paper, but not in reality. Apologies. It's complete chaos. And apparently you can't say that. Be grateful. We used to be great. This country. Rule the waves. As Tennyson said, though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. Nothing changes, apparently. Okay, we're getting sad now. Oh, we had that, I think, already. I missed a couple of super chats. Edward says, I think that's it. Yeah, I know what that means. Islam and all those who believe it. Filth. And KKK says, I suggest copy and paste to be allowed only in super chat messages. Well, just to give funding. Well, yeah, I mean, if you just send one super chat, you don't have to copy and paste it anyway, because it will go to his different category. Anyway, there is always hope. We will fight back. For all of us, wherever you're watching, whether it's Belgium, Norway, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, even Brazil. Fight for freedom, fight for your sovereignty, and fight for your patriotism. You've been watching 2C TV. I'm Maya 2C, and we are the media.